This weekend, 47 years ago, Idaho was put on the national stage because of politics, but not because of something ridiculous one of our state legislators said, a law they wanted to pass, or a senator's stance in a public bathroom. No, this weekend, 47 years ago, one of our senators decided he would run for president. The second and last Idahoan to do so. Senator Frank Church announced his candidacy March 18, 1976 in Idaho City. Why there? Well, because that was the birthplace of his father, whose own father came to Idaho during the Boise Basin or gold rush of the 1860s. Today, we're taking a look back at that run up to that race with the help of the KTVB archives.
It seemed to me appropriate that I should make this announcement in Idaho City, and I hope you will all be there.
The Honorable Frank Church, the next President of the United States.
An Idahoan seeking the highest elected office in all the land? Well, ambitions weren't always so high for Frank Church.
In 1924, Frank Forrester Church was born in Boise's old St. Alphonsus Hospital.
As explained,
He grew up here in this house on Franklin Street.
in 1984.
Frank Church was more fortunate than most of us because from an early age, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a United States Senator, and he wanted to be chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
Those aspirations began with an admiration of William Borah, the senator from Idaho known as the Lion because of his speaking style, something Church picked up at an early age.
At just 16 years of age, Frank Church won the 1941 American Legion Oratorical Contest. The contest netted him a $4,000 scholarship,
which Church used to attend law school after a stint in the Army. He graduated from Stanford Law and returned to Boise to practice it. 5 years later, in 1956, the first phase of Church's childhood plan was in hand.
At 32, he was the fourth youngest man ever to win a seat in the U.S. Senate.
A Foreign Relations Committee assignment soon followed, in recognition of his strong support of civil rights. His strong support of John F. Kennedy earned him the keynote speaker spot at the 1960 Democratic National Convention. And Church wasn't shy about using that voice, speaking out against the Vietnam War when it wasn't popular to do so.
A bloodbath without equal in human history, with the stakes mortally high. We must not permit the stifling of dissent in the United States.
And speaking up after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
Last night, a good man who was black was foully murdered by a bad man who was white. If the good men of the country, whatever their color, don't rededicate themselves to the Christian principles for which Martin Luther King stood, then the bad men of the country, whatever their color, will come to prevail.
His third term took him into the 70s when he tried to block President Nixon's attempt to send troops to Cambodia and successfully stopped the bombing there in 1973. In 1975, his investigation into U.S. covert intelligence operations overseas didn't earn him many friends, but brought about several changes. Then, on March 18, 1976, Senator Church decided to step into the race for president. A bit delayed, but he was undaunted.
So to those who say it's too late, I reply that it's never too late to try, nor are the odds ever too great. That was the spirit with which the West was won, and in that spirit, I now formally declare my candidacy for the office of President of the United States.
Backed by Governor Cecil Andrus, Church gives one of his greatest speeches on Main Street in Idaho City.
Our tragedy in recent years springs from a leadership principally motivated by fear from men of little faith.
Church's own belief of being a frontrunner.
What would you say the odds are that you're going to be successful?
He explains from the back
I
seat.
think the gamble is worth it, and that's why I'm in it. If I thought there were no chance, even though I start very late, I wouldn't have declared today.
Church runs hard. He wins primaries in 4 states, Nebraska, Idaho, Montana, and Oregon. But he's in too late. The tide from Georgia sweeps over the country. He concedes to Governor Jimmy Carter.
I have and will again urge those delegates who are pledged to me
to support the candidacy of Governor Carter.
His candidacy is gone, but Church isn't forgotten. In a show of unity, he is called to the stage at the Democratic Convention that July.
Senator Frank Church!
Church then stepped out of the national spotlight, but his focus on foreign affairs continued. His trip to Cuba in 1977 is well documented.
Idaho Senator Frank Church is back from a 4-day visit to Cuba and says moves toward further diplomatic relations with America's closest communist neighbor rest with the United States.
As far as the United States is concerned, I see the beginnings of a improvement in our relations.
However, 2 years later, finally the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Church, in a press conference in Boise, revealed some startling news about the communist country.
Intelligence agencies have confirmed the existence of a Russian brigade in Cuba. This means that somewhere between 2,300 and 3,000 Soviet troops are now located on the island. The United States cannot permit the island to become a Russian military base 90 miles from our shore, nor can we allow Cuba to be used as a springboard for Russian military intervention in the Western Hemisphere.
The next year, in 1980,
when Frank Church talks, people listen.
Church ran for a 5th term.
Idaho has never had a better friend.
In a tough race against Congressman Steve Sims.
The voters made the final decision. And even though the margin wasn't great, Church lost. His 24 years of public life ended.
Church returned to Washington to work for a law firm who specialized in foreign relations, which is why he shared his concerns about Central America in one of his last TV interviews in 1983.
War is spreading, and we're not only supplying large quantities of war materials, but we're actually hiring mercenaries to do the fighting for us against the government in Nicaragua.
Senator Frank Church continued to speak the truth till the end. He passed away from pancreatic cancer on April 7th, 1984. He was just 59 years old. Senator Church was survived by his wife, Bethine, also a native Idahoan, whom he married in 1947. She passed away in 2013. Together, they raised 2 boys. Of course, this story didn't even touch on Senator Church's environmental record and how he helped create several wilderness and recreation areas across Idaho, including the River of No Return Wilderness, his final year in the Senate. The 2.3 million acres surrounding the Salmon River in the central part of the state was renamed the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness in 1984. That's a whole other story for another day, though. Senator Church was the last Democratic senator to serve the state of Idaho.